My grammar school was a boys-only, stand-up-when-a-teacher-comes-in-the class kind of establishment, with all pupils having to pass the aforementioned 11-plus entry examination to get in. This was an old-style school with old-style values, and as excellent as the standard of education and learning was, the standard of discipline was formidable. Good order was kept almost exclusively by the use of fear and violence, and boy did it work. Almost all the teachers were happy, actually more than happy, to dish out physical punishment. Absolute wankers, the lot of them. At the time it was the norm, but looking back now, it was highly questionable behaviour at best, more likely criminal. It's hard to believe that in all the time I was there, not a single dad turned up to give one of the masters a good thump. Almost all the teachers took great pride in their choice of weapon to beat us with, all feeling a perverted need to continue their academic theme. Our chemistry teacher, for example, would beat us with a length of Bunsen burner rubber tubing. Normally brown, his length had blackened with age. Apparently he'd had it for years. At first we didn't believe it was real. We thought it was just a ruse told to us by older boys to frighten the life out of us freshers. But one day we pushed our teacher too far and discovered we were wrong. The notorious whip did indeed exist. And when he decided to use it, he would physically start shaking with a worrying mixture of anger and excitement. This would cause him to scatter the contents of his briefcase all over the place in a frenzy to dig out his whip. Even his comb-over came to life. The offending malcontent would hear his name called out, followed by the instruction to come to the master's desk, or bench as it was in the chemistry lab. By the time the poor quivering pupil had arrived, Sir was armed, winding up and getting ready to let rip. Some of the tougher boys would not let him see their pain. For them it was a game that often made the master cry before they did. This was most humorous for the rest of us, as he would continue to hit them whilst bleating, "Why are you making me do this? This is wrong. I don't want to hit you. I don't want to hit you." Needless to say, he was a confirmed bachelor. One afternoon, I was attempting to survive another physics lesson. It was a sunny, pleasant day outside, and I was stuck in a classroom which looked out over the school playing fields, past the cricket pavilion, and on to the railway line in the distance. This day I'd long since drifted off far away from whatever it was we were supposed to be studying, and had taken instead to writing on my desk. I know this is wrong, and I shouldn't have been doing it, but as wrong as it was, I didn't deserve what was about to happen next. Unbeknownst to me, the physics master had been stood behind me silently for the last few minutes, for the duration of my vandalism. He began calmly, certainly. "Evans, what are you doing?" It was one of those annoying questions when it was obvious what I was doing. He knew it and I knew it. He just wanted me to say it out loud. All perverts want you to say it out loud. I didn't say anything. He repeated his question, this time so perplexed and through such gritted teeth I could barely understand what he was saying. The veins in his neck were standing out, his mouth foaming at the sides. "Evans, what are you doing?" This time I did manage to utter something, albeit very reluctantly. "Writing on the desk, sir." This reply immediately had my classmates in fits. They were clasping their hands over their mouths to suppress the laughter. It was obvious I was for the chop. And when you're at school, as long as it's not you, that's the funniest thing in the world. The sniggering and snorting was doing nothing to help my cause. It only added to making a mockery of the whole situation. Something that thrust old Nutjob into hyper-rage. He was furious by now, his ire consuming him. But what he hadn't yet seen was exactly what I was writing on the desk. I was praying to God he wouldn't. "And what are you writing?" Oh, no. Well, now here's the thing, you see. I was writing his name and my impression of his preferred sexuality. Oh, fuck, I thought. Oh, fuck. Fucking hell, fuck me, I'm fucked. And I was. "Come on, Evans! What does it say?" he screamed. "Sir is a queer?" That was it, that's what I'd written. The fact that, in my ill-informed schoolboy brain, he was indeed a queer. The rest of the lads were immediately back in hysterics. This was bad, very bad, and made worse by the fact that I declared that he was a queer in front of a class of boys who all had supposed he might well be for some time now. He looked at me as if he wanted to kill me. He then punched me as hard as he could. Not in the face, but in the chest. There was shock all round the room. My classmates sat open-mouthed in amazement as I was thrown back down the aisle, where I hit the wall before slumping to the ground, completely winded. What in Christ's name did this psycho think he was doing? I will never forget what I did next. There is a difference between bravery and fearlessness. I think bravery is more contemplated, whereas fearlessness is more of a reaction to a situation, the consequences of which are not an issue. This is exactly how I was feeling. Incredulous as to what had happened, I raised myself up off the floor, scrambled back to my desk, picked up my chair, and smashed it over his head as hard as I could. I do remember for sure him looking up at me and visibly cowering. Suddenly his whole demeanour had changed. He looked like he was scared to death. The coward had shown himself for what he really was, a sorry and pathetic bully who'd been stripped of his so-called might. I threw down the chair and walked out. As the big, heavy classroom door thudded shut behind me with the help of one of those big brass cantilever arms that no one ever knows the name of, I found myself transported from chaos and calamity to calmness and serenity. I was suddenly alone. The corridors, often so busy during changeover and break times, were now deathly quiet. It was all very poignant. I took one last look inside the classroom at the scene of bewilderment. You could have that, I thought. I was by no means a model student, but nor was I one of the bad lads, and I certainly didn't deserve what had just happened to me.